20 shocking attacks by bizarre creatures at 3 a.m. You won't believe their stories. It was a night just like any other, or so they thought. But when the clock struck 3, a chilling slice of reality gripped the small town of Oakwood. Whispers of the unusual filled the air, tales of creatures so bizarre they seemed snatched from the pages of nightmares. How could it be? 20 shocking events, all happening at the same time, and they were all too strange to ignore. Picture this. A woman in her home, mindlessly flipping through channels when she hears a frantic scratching at her window. It was a creature, 8 legs, shimmering skin, and eyes that glowed like molten copper. She froze, breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding as her mind raced. Was it real? Was it a figment of her imagination? The horror felt tangible, the night darker than ever. But she wasn't alone. Down the road, a little boy screamed as his toys began to fly around his room. His parents rushed in just in time to see a feathered mass dart out of the open window like a bolt of electricity. What was this thing, and how had it escaped the confines of a child's imagination? Gasps echoed as neighbors gathered, their faces reflecting a blend of confusion and fear. They whispered fragments of stories about similar sightings, creatures lurking in the shadows just beyond the grasp of reason. Then came the most unsettling incident of all. A couple out for a midnight stroll when they heard an eerie howling. It pierced the silence, echoing through the midnight air. Just as they turned to leave, something massive charged out from the trees, a hulking figure with fur bristling in the moonlight. They barely managed to escape, breathless and shaking, a primal mix of terror and exhilaration coursing through them. What was chasing them? And who else might it target? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As these tales of terror spread, a new question bubbled to the surface. What were these creatures? Some said they were demonic manifestations. Others believed they were simply animals driven mad by the inexplicable. But as the sun began to rise, heavy and purple on the horizon, one thing was certain. The night had changed them all. Curiosity hung thick in the air, mingling with fear. As people exchanged frantic glances, a simmering anticipation built like a storm ready to break. With more reports flooding in, each story stranger than the last, there was no denying it. Something was happening in Oakwood, something far beyond the ordinary. The question wasn't just what these creatures were, but what they wanted and why had they chosen this sleepy town. There was a sense that this was just the beginning of a much bigger mystery, one that, come nightfall, would demand answers. Would they be brave enough to face what lurked in the dark? The sun had barely breached the horizon, casting a pale light over Oakwood, but its warmth felt a universe away from the chilling events of the night before. In the heart of the town, whispers spread like wildfire. People gathered at the local diner, eyes wide, hands trembling over coffee cups as they shared stories, each one more surreal than the last. A man sat at the corner booth, his face pale as if blood had drained from it. He'd been out late, delivering pizzas, and he recounted how a slender figure with elongated limbs had darted across the road. So fast, it was merely a blur. I swear it had wings, he stammered, and the diners leaned in closer, their curiosity piqued. What had once been disbelief now morphed into a greedy hunger for the strange and unexplained, but not everyone was inclined to gossip. Claire, a nurse with sharp instincts, sensed the growing dread. The number of patients in the ER had spiked overnight, and all with similar symptoms: heightened anxiety, nightmares, and unexplained bruises. Each of them murmured about shadows chasing them in their sleep. Claire couldn't shake the feeling that there was a connection, but how? She decided to take matters into her own hands. After her shift ended, Claire grabbed her flashlight and drove to the outskirts of town, her heart racing with both fear and determination. The woods behind Oakwood had always felt ominous, but now it seemed they were hiding secrets more sinister than ever. As she approached the tree line, her mind flashed to the story's creatures of dust and shadow. born from fears not yet understood. Silently, she slipped into the dense thicket, her breath shallow as the sounds of the everyday world faded. Suddenly, the air shifted. The night was alive with movement. Leaves rustled, and distant howls echoed, weaving in and out of her consciousness like a haunting melody. Then she caught it. A flicker of movement, something darting between the trees. She pointed her flashlight where she thought she'd seen it, but it was gone. Heart hammering, she took a deep breath and pressed on, driven by an urgent need for answers. What if she could capture evidence? What if these monsters were not imagined, but real? And then, silence. The kind of silence that suffocated. She swallowed hard, the lump in her throat growing. Just as she turned to leave, a bone-chilling shriek erupted from the darkness. It was as if the woods were alive and angry. Claire froze, adrenaline flooding her system. In that suspended moment, she became acutely aware of her own vulnerability, exposed under the gaze of whatever might be lurking there. The flashlight beams danced frantically as she spun around, searching for the source of the shriek. A shape emerged slowly from the shadows, its eyes glinting like shards of glass. Panic surged, but deep down, a voice whispered, the kind of voice we ignore, the one that directs us to confront our deepest fears. This was it, the moment she had inadvertently stepped into. The encounter was inevitable. Could she stand her ground, or would this be her end? With swift breaths and a racing heart, Claire met its gaze, and just as a scream clawed its way up her throat, she recognized the unmistakable glimmer of intelligence in those eyes. It wanted something. What? That question hung in the air as Claire realized time was running out. Was she ready to face whatever darkness lay just beyond the surface of her nightmares? With the gain of knowledge came an undertone of dread, and the woods whispered secrets that demanded to be uncovered. The hunt had begun. What lay ahead could change everything. Would Claire be the one to unravel it? Or would she become another lost story in the echoes of the night? As she stepped forward, a sense of foreboding wrapped around her. What if the answer she sought opened the floodgates of chaos that would engulf Oakwood for good? A chill crept down Claire's spine as she took a cautious step toward the dark figure, its eyes reflecting an unnatural bent of reality. The forest around her seemed to close in, branches straining like skeletal hands, as if warning her to turn back. Yet a part of her, the part that had confronted countless emergencies in the ER, whispered that this was her moment to shine. What do you want? Claire's voice came out stronger than she felt, reverberating through the thick veil of darkness. The creature tilted its head as if considering her question, the glint in its eyes deepening. An unsettling quiet settled, making her heart thud louder. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching her, assessing the tension between them. Suddenly, the moment shattered. A rustling erupted from beyond the trees, and Claire swung her flashlight toward the source. There it was again, a flash of something darting, quick as a heartbeat. Shadows morphed and twisted, revealing more figures lurking within the depths of the forest. Claire's pulse raced. This time, she wasn't just facing one creature but a whole assembly. Yet, the figure before her remained still, fixated on Claire. Her instincts kicked in, a nurse's intuition that had kept her patients safe time and again. She couldn't let fear dictate her actions. Taking a deep breath, she focused back on the creature. "Are you here to hurt me?" She felt ridiculous for asking, voice trembling a touch as the shadows moved closer, almost encircling her, their quiet chatter like whispers in a foreign language. From the darkness, a low growl rolled, sending a wave of dread coursing through her. No answer came from the creature, but it stepped forward, each movement smooth yet predatory. Just as fear tightened its grip, something shifted in its gaze. It wasn't the gleam of malice she sensed, but an echo of desperation and urge, perhaps a plea? Claire's thoughts raced. Was this thing a monster, or a spectral harbinger of something worse? As if sensing her turmoil, it raised a slender arm, pointing toward a path just behind her. Did it want her to follow? She hesitated, torn between the instinct to run and the desire to understand. Then, the shrieking howl erupted again, louder this time, shaking the very branches overhead. In that moment of fury, the forest lit up around her like a nightmare made manifest. Claire realized she wasn't alone in this confrontation. There were more hidden in the dark, and they were getting restless. Heart pounding, she stepped back cautiously, keeping her flashlight trained on the creature that had captivated her. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, desperation lacing her tone, but an unexpected answer came. From the shadows, another figure emerged, this one larger, bulkier, with fur matted in dirt and eyes full of an eerie hunger. Claire backed away slowly, her breath hitching as she recognized the danger now closing in. The slender figure snapped its head to the newcomer, its posture shifting. In that instant, a silent connection pulsed between the two creatures: fear, rage, a need for survival. And then they turned towards her. The sensation of being the prey clawed at Claire, driving her instincts wild. Panic flared as she spun on her heel, adrenaline coursing through her veins, pushing her to run. But the ground beneath her began to tremble. The cacophony of branches breaking sent her roaring through the trees, heart racing even faster than her feet could carry her. She didn't know the way, she had entered on impulse. And now, as the shrieks faded behind her, the woods transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and predators, all of it conspiring to devour her. What truths lay hidden in this forest? What did the creature want? Would Claire make it out alive with more than questions and scraps of knowledge? A branch snapped behind her, and she glanced over her shoulder, catching the sight of outstretched limbs. They were coming, and the real hunt was only just beginning. Claire's lungs burned as she barreled through the underbrush, branches clawing at her arms and legs. The darkness seemed alive, a crushing weight that pushed against her chest. Every sound echoed inside her skull, the snap of twigs and rustle of leaves merging into a chaotic symphony of terror. The fear ignited something primal within her, a furious wish to survive. "Think, Claire, think," she whispered to herself, trying to drown out the hunter's imminent approach. She had to find a way to hide, a place to regroup. The flashlight flickered as she ran, casting erratic beams that danced along the thick trunks, mocking her desperate flight. Once, she spotted the silhouette of a gnarled tree, its hollow core containing secrets. Could it offer refuge? With quick, jerky movements, she veered toward it, slipping inside just as another piercing howl echoed through the forest. Inside the tree, space was tight and dark, a close cocoon of bark and hidden shadows. Claire pressed her back against the wood, holding her breath. The sounds of the forest faded momentarily, and for an instant, she let hope take root in her heart. But that didn't last long. Not far from her makeshift sanctuary, the creatures were relentless, their forms prowling, sniffing at the air. They were close. Her heart raced with the rhythm of impending doom. She could hear them communicate, low growls and soft murmurs, a conversation of predation. "They're hunting," she thought, dread coursing through her veins. Then, a flash of iridescent eyes caught her attention. The slender creature she'd seen before had emerged from the shadows. It seemed to lead the other monsters, its gaze searching, waiting. Claire's pulse raced anew. What if it was trying to protect her? How could something that looked so menacing also be desperate? But it was just a fleeting thought. Suddenly, it turned toward the hollow tree, its body taut with tension. An instinctual jolt surged through Claire. She pressed further into the confines of the tree, heart racing. She was trapped. A snarl pierced the silence from the surrounding figures. They circled, prowling closer, their breaths heavy and warm against the cool air. Claire's mind clashed with fear and determination. The hunter had become the hunted. "What do you want?" she murmured to the shadows outside, searching for the courage she thought she had found moments earlier. But the words sounded fragile, almost ridiculous in the face of their ravenous presence. And then she heard a soft rustling, almost like fabric sliding along the forest floor. It was coming from the other side of the hollow. With a gulp, she craned her neck to get a view. More creatures were creeping in, their forms swaying like shadows. They seemed drawn to her, eyes reflecting something other than hunger and interest, maybe even recognition. Suddenly, the leading figure, her slender tormentor, bounded toward the shadows past the tree. It was brilliant as it moved, a blur of speed and grace. The air crackled with anticipation, and she could only watch, her heart pounding. As it turned and shot back towards her, it seemed to decide something. Swift and agile, it darted back, coming right to the entrance. Claire's body tensed, every muscle coiling like a springed eye in a desperate impulse. She raised her flashlight to catch the creature's eye, blinking when the beam illuminated both it and the oncoming darkness. Just then, she realized the truth: the creatures weren't just after her. They were escaping danger of their own. But from the deep of the night, something else stirred. A low growl erupted, rumbling through the ground like an earthquake, sending vibrations through the tree. This was a different kind of predator, and it was closing in fast. As Claire's heart threatened to explode from her chest, she realized each creature was staring at her, waiting, anticipating her next move. Would she go with them, aligning herself with the unknown, or take her chances against whatever dark terror moved in the shadows outside? Time slipped away like the shifting leaves, and she realized that decision was no longer hers to make. Claire's mind raced, her instincts screaming louder than the growls that closed in around her. The figures outside the hollow tree held a strange kind of beauty, their sinuous bodies coiling and uncoiling with each passing second. She didn't understand them, but something whispered deep inside her. They were no ordinary beasts. The tension in the air thickened like fog, weighing heavily on her chest. She could feel at the pulsating dread that something unfathomable was approaching. The slender creature lingered at the entrance, its iridescent eyes reflecting the beam of her flashlight like twin moons caught in a net. "Please, don't," Claire exhaled, the words barely escaping her lips. The creature hesitated, ears flicking as it assessed the danger. Then, without warning, a massive shape erupted from the darkness. A monstrous form surged toward them, its presence splitting the night with a roar that chilled Claire's blood. It was twice the size of any creature she had encountered, its hide glistening with a sheen that shimmered like oil. Panic surged in her veins as the slender figure darted forward, drawing the looming creature's attention. It danced across the forest floor, swift and graceful, taunting the brute with its agility. For a heartbeat, Claire was entranced. Was it truly protecting her? Could these creatures be allies against the horror that stalked them? But before she could grasp that thought, the giant lunged, teeth bared, and Claire felt her instincts push her into action. "Get away," she shouted, a raw conviction overtaking her fear. She pushed herself against the inner wall of the tree, heart thumping, desperate need for survival clawing at her. With a sudden, surprising ferocity, the slender creature swerved just in time, dodging the rush of teeth that snapped dangerously close. The noise shattered the forest, a chorus of snarls and cries erupting around her. She watched as the agile figure darted toward her, retreating into the shelter of the hollow. It was not safe in here, but she had nowhere else to go. In that fleeting moment, she felt the connection intensify. Those creatures were not merely monsters. They were fighters, survivors, just like her. How could she safely align herself with them? The growls intensified, a fierce competition breaking out between the sleek figures and the colossal beast, each roar hanging heavy in the night air. Claire squeezed her flashlight, its beam flickering with uncertainty, battling the darkness that threatened to consume her. "Think, Claire," she repeated, but it was no longer just a mantra, it was a plea. A fire ignited in her gut. She understood that her chance lay in the choice of trust. Did she wait for her doom, or could she throw caution to the wind and trust in these elusive allies? The world outside the tree seemed to hold its breath as Claire gathered the strength she didn't know she had. "I'm tired of running," she whispered, determination filling her voice. What did she have left to lose? With a sudden burst of courage, Claire stepped to the entrance of the hollow, the chaos swirling before her. She felt the eyes of both the slender creature and its monstrous opponent on her, energy crackling in the air. "Let us go." With no time to hesitate, she spun around and emerged from the tree, her torch slicing through the night, a beacon of hesitant courage. She charged forward, creatures parting for her. She felt the shift in the atmosphere. The daunting predator had turned its focus, the tension palpable. What now? She wondered, breath hitching as the monstrous figure locked eyes with her, a space filled with unspoken possibilities. Her heart pounded. The path ahead was a storm, dark, chaotic, thrilling. She looked back at the slender creature, still poised, waiting for a signal. With every sense attuned to the pulse of danger, Claire knew that whatever lay ahead would define her fate. And in that moment, she realized she hadn't just chosen to join them. She had embraced the unknown. But as the scene unfolded, a chilling cry erupted into the night, a voice so unearthly it sent shivers down her spine, echoing her greatest fears. Run or fight, Claire breathed heavily, facing the unimaginable. There's no turning back now. As the ground trembled beneath her feet, she wondered what kind of monster would emerge next. The darkness loomed, and the night wasn't done with her. Claire's heart raced, each beat mingling with the low, guttural growls that surrounded her. The enormous beast stood its ground, muscles rippling as it shifted, watching her with fierce, unyielding eyes. The air felt charged, buzzing with a strange energy, and the slender creature remained at her side, its posture taut, ready to spring. Then, with a sudden burst of movement, the brute lunged again. Claire's instincts screamed, and she barely managed to dive out of the way, landing hard on the forest floor. A jagged rock dug painfully into her side, but pain was a distant thought as she scrambled back up, adrenaline overruling everything else. "Come on, Claire," she urged herself. The forest was a cacophony of snarls, snapping jaws, and the sound of a body crashing into the underbrush. The slender creature, sleek and agile, darted back and forth, weaving around the massive beast with a grace that astonished Claire. It was like watching a dance of life and death unfold. The echoes of their chaos felt like a heartbeat in the darkness. Claire glanced around, her mind racing for an escape as panic twisted in her gut. She could hear the whisper of the forest, age-old trees creaking around her. They had witnessed unspeakable things, had likely felt the ground tremble under the weight of countless battles. Think, she muttered, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The courageous stand she'd taken paled under the pressure of reality. The monster bore down with an unsettling sense of inevitability. Wait, the thought surged in Claire's mind. If these creatures were indeed fighters, could they work together against this threat? She took a steadying breath, feeling the weight of the decision set on her shoulders. "Hey," she shouted, surprising herself. "We need to distract it." She pointed her flashlight toward the colossal beast, maneuvering in the dark. The slender creature paused, sensing her urgency, and to her shock, it nodded slightly before leaping toward Claire's command. As the creature darted in front of the towering monster, Claire shouted again. "Over here. Come and get me." The brute, momentarily distracted, bared its teeth, and the ground rumbled with its growl, a sound so deep it reverberated through her bones. Claire had no idea if the slender creature had intentions to protect her or simply survive. She took a leap of faith, trusting that their fates were now intertwined. With agile movements, the slender creature danced just out of reach of the beast, luring it away from Claire. She felt a rush of gratitude, despite the fear clawing at her heart. But this wouldn't hold it off for long. "Now what?" she whispered, eyes darting around for anything that could help. As if reading her thoughts, the slender one shot toward the nearest tree, weaving between its thick branches as if leading the monstrous creature into a trap. Claire decided to follow, propelled by an instinct that had long been buried beneath layers of fear. The chase escalated. The brute smashed through the underbrush, leaves and branches snapping under its weight as it pursued its prey. Claire sprinted, fueled by the need to survive, her flashlight illuminating the path ahead like a lifeline in the shadows. But lurking just outside her vision, beyond the reach of her beam, she sensed something even darker, something more potent than just brute strength. A stench filled the air, a foul scent that cut through the forest like a knife. Is there more? Her heart thudded painfully in her chest as the realization struck her. A chill swept through the night, freezing her in place. Then came the sound. A rustling, slow and deliberate. Something else was approaching. Claire turned just in time to catch a glimpse of a silhouette darting through the trees, far too large to be solely a figment of her imagination. "Claire!" The slender creature returned, barely avoiding a swipe from the beast, its eyes wide with urgency, urging her to move. But Claire was frozen, caught in the ominous web of the unknown. It wasn't just a showdown anymore, it was war. And amid the noise and confusion, as desperation clawed at her insides, she couldn't shake the feeling that something far worse was still lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. What had she unleashed? Claire's breath caught in her throat as she felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. The air was thick with danger, a palpable sense of foreboding wrapping around her like a vice. Her eyes darted nervously from the colossal beast, now focused on the slender creature, back to the direction of the ominous rustling. Each sound echoed in her mind, amplifying her fears. "Move!" she screamed, her voice raw, desperate. The slender creature whipped around, its narrowed gaze fixed on her with an intelligence that made Claire's heart ache with both hope and dread. It bounded ahead, and Claire followed, propelled forward by sheer instinct. The snarls of the beast sounded closer now, the sound a terrifying reminder that they were not safe, not yet. She glanced back and then froze. The original monster was no longer alone. Another enormous silhouette loomed, emerging from the forest shadows behind it. Two beasts, and who knew how many more? "Why are they coming after us?" Claire whispered to the slender creature, but it simply darted sideways, eyes bright and unyielding, urging her to keep going. Suddenly, Claire stumbled, catching her foot on a protruding root. She crashed to the ground, pain shooting through her ankle. A sharp gasp escaped her lips, and for a moment, she floundered in the dirt, engulfed by a wave of panic. "Get up!" She willed herself, breathing deeply as she pushed against the ground, fighting the instinct to stay curled up in fear. "Claire!" The slender beast paused, glancing back with an expression that seemed almost human, full of concern and something more. It bolted towards her, nudging her gently with its snout, coaxing her to rise. With gritted teeth, she turned her head back to the approaching monsters. Could they smell her fear? She scrambled to stand, using the tree as leverage. "Go!" she shouted, and they began to move again. It was only then that she realized her ankle was free enough to support her weight. They dashed through the trees, the creatures hot on their tail. Claire felt her heart pounding in rhythm with the thunderous footfalls behind them. The moonlight filtered through, casting eerie shadows that leapt around her in the haunting darkness. Then it got worse. The air shifted again, becoming heavy and oppressive. The foul stench intensified, and Claire could almost taste the decay on her tongue. It was a putrid scent, soured by something ancient and malicious lurking in the shadows. "What is that?" Claire choked out as they rounded a bend. The slender creature stopped abruptly, ears pricked. It turned its head, peering into the darkness as if trying to discern the impossible forms flitting about. There's something watching them. Claire took a few steps closer to the slender creature. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but curiosity pinned her feet down. What more could be hiding in the depths of those malevolent shadows? A figure slipped between trees, illuminated by the moon for just a fleeting second. It was another creature longer and slimmer than either of the beasts chasing them. It had rows of jagged teeth and eyes that glowed like headlights in the dark. "Run!" The slender creature darted forward, but Claire felt frozen again, entranced by the fear storming through her veins. Then, without warning, the two original beasts lunged, their enormous jaws snapping just inches away from her. The ground shook beneath her as they collided, a savage play of raw power and agile grace. Claire staggered back, dizzy and overwhelmed. It was chaos, a night filled with horrors she could scarcely comprehend. "No, no, no," she whimpered nervously, turning to the slender creature. "What are we going to do?" But the slender creature had already slipped into the trees, its movements tantalizingly quick, daring Claire to follow. "Wait, come back." The echo of growls erupted anew. How many were there? How did this place become a battleground of darkness? Driven by fear, she followed, dodging branches and leaping over fallen logs. But the uncertainty hung around her like a dark cloud, suffocating and unyielding. What lay ahead? Hope or deeper despair? The shadows grew thicker, and she knew whatever lay in wait wasn't done with her yet. Just then, the sound of hissing erupted around them, joining the howls of the beasts. What had awakened? Claire's heart thundered in her chest, the hissing sound wrapping around her like a snake tightening its grip. Panic surged, flooding her veins. What was happening? The slender creature shot ahead, its lithe body slicing through the darkened woods, while Claire struggled to keep pace. The growls of the beasts faded momentarily, but the hissing persisted, a menacing chorus that filled the air with dread. "What are you?" Claire gasped, as she forced her legs to pump faster. The creature spared her a glance, its vibrant eyes flickering with a mixture of fear and urgency, as if telling her to trust it more than ever. They burst into a clearing, moonlight flooding the space like a spotlight, illuminating the chaos waiting within. Claire skidded to a stop, horrified, as shadows darted across the ground. There were more than just the two beasts. Shapes twisted and writhed among the trees, each one more grotesque than the last. From the dense underbrush emerged what looked like a creature stitched together from nightmares, a long, sinewy body adorned with leathery skin and the skull of some long-forgotten beast. It stopped in its tracks, its glowing eyes locked onto Claire. The suffocating smell grew stronger, a rancid scent that clawed at her throat. Claire stumbled back, her breath catching. What the hell? Run! The slender creature dashed toward a cluster of rocks, its footsteps barely making a sound. Claire grabbed her trembling ankle, hesitation gnawing at her. Could she follow? These creatures were closing in. The deformed aberration slithered closer, its maw opening impossibly wide. Claire's instincts kicked in, propelling her forward. She forced her feet to move, heart pounding, while the landscape blurred around her. Her ankle screamed in protest, but there was no time to stop. The sound of branches cracking above her head brought her gaze upward. Blood-red eyes peered down from the treetops, and she screamed as a smaller, monstrous beast leapt into the clearing, its fangs glistening under the moonlight. The slender creature moved in an instant, circling Claire, creating a barrier between her and the encroaching terror. "Stay behind me." It seemed to bark at her, its posture confident, protective. Suddenly, the big beast from earlier lunged back into the clearing, fur bristling, teeth gnashing. It was joined by the second beast, the two of them snarling in unison, but the slender creature did not sway. It turned its body, facing the incoming threat, grounding itself. "Why can't you just run?" Claire yelled, confusion mixing with terror. Before she could reach out, the slender creature leaped forward, swiping its elongated claws, forcing the surrounding beasts to retreat momentarily. Adrenaline coursed through Claire as she watched the raw elegance of the fight unfold, but there was no time to linger. With heightened senses, she could hear the woods itself coming alive, the air thick with a symphony of growls, hisses, and something far darker lurking right beneath their feet. Claire ignored her pain and scuttled after the slender creature, glancing back to see the pack frantically moving, but their eyes were fixed, exploring the very place they stood. The ground trembled again, an ominous warning. She skidded to a halt as the ground opened behind her, swallowing the smaller beast whole. In that split second, something far more massive emerged, towering from the earth with claws that scraped the sky and a deep growl that shook the very roots of the trees. No, Claire's voice was a mere whisper, eyes wide with disbelief. The bigger beast turned toward her with a hunger that made her stomach drop. "What do I do?" She felt the heat of panic clawing at her throat. Before she could think, the slender creature pulled her closer, daring her to cling to hope amidst the chaos. The massive creature opened its maw, ready to unleash hell. Could they escape, or were they destined to become part of the night? But it wasn't done. Not yet. The darkest shadows emerged from the forest, drawing nearer. What other horrors lay in wait? A deafening roar erupted from the maw of the massive beast, echoing through the clearing like thunder crashing through glass. Claire's heart sank as she felt the reverberation in her bones, a primal fear gripping her insides. She glanced up at the slender creature, whose gaze remained fierce yet uncertain, as if assessing their odds against this looming titan. "Please," Claire whimpered, barely able to articulate the suffocating panic clawing at her throat. The slender creature responded by narrowing its eyes, determination flooding its expression. It stepped forward, striking a pose filled with defiance, even as the ground trembled beneath Claire's feet. Before Claire could comprehend what was happening, the ground beneath her began to shift again, crumbling like a stale cookie. As she strained to keep her balance, the creature lunged, a blur of sinew and speed, darting between the massive beast and Claire. It was impossibly brave. The earth roared again, this time opening up wide in a gaping maw, reeking of decay. The smaller creatures were scrambling backward, their faces twisted in primal fear, sensing something that Claire could not yet see. If those beasts were afraid, what did that say about the new threat emerging? "Get back!" The slender creature yelled in a guttural voice. Claire felt sweat sliding down her spine as she backed away, heart pounding. She held her breath, eyes wide, as the air buzzed with tension. What was coming? The shadows danced closer, creeping from all parts of the forest, coiling in a tight embrace, wrapping around the massive creature and its prey. In an instant, darkness unfurled, revealing a series of grotesque forms, long-limbed beings with gnarled faces, eyes glowing like embers in the night. It felt like a nightmare come to life, a horde summoned from the depths of some ancient evil. Claire shivered, a lump forming in her throat. "Don't let them get to you," the slender creature shouted, fending off clawing limbs that reached out from the dark. In a blur of motion, it took on several of the lurking shadows, driving them back with swift, powerful strikes. But for every one it tossed away, two more surged forward, relentless, drawn to Claire as if she were an offering. They hissed, lunging, their mouths stretching into twisted grins. "Keep moving," the slender creature urged, its voice fierce, yet lined with a sense of urgency that twisted Claire's stomach. But she was too frozen, an observer caught in a paralyzing moment of terror. The grotesque figures drew closer, shadows merging with their surroundings, creating a taunting dance. In the corner of her eye, she saw something shift. One of the massive creature's claws seemed unmoving, poised like a statue. Claire, roused by the urgency in the slender creature's voice, she searched for a way out. Nearby lay a rock formation, jagged and menacing. Her instincts kicked in. Without a second thought, she bolted toward it. Using every ounce of strength that remained, the woods roared alive with chaos, a symphony of hisses and growls that seeped into her bones. As Claire rushed, she felt the urge to look back, to see if the slender creature was still with her. And just as she turned, a shadow slipped past her, razor-sharp claws outstretched, ready to snatch her back into the grasp of the dark. "No," she screamed, diving behind the nearest rock, heart racing, breath quickening. Panicked, she pressed her back against the cold stone, aware of the world around her spiraling into chaos. The clearing transformed into a battleground as the slender creature clashed against a wave of nightmares, its agility mesmerizing. But it was becoming increasingly outnumbered. Would it survive this onslaught? Or was Claire about to witness its last stand? As shadows danced, she steeled herself. There was no more time for hesitation. She had to act. What could she do, though, when surrounded by horror? Claire's breaths were ragged, pounding like a war drum in her chest as she crouched behind the jagged rock, the chaos swirling around her. The scene felt like a twisted reality. The slender creature fought valiantly, its lithe body moving with both grace and desperation, but the onslaught was overwhelming. Shadows hissed and clawed their way forward, dark fingers seeking her out, and the weight of their intent pressed down on her like the thickest fog. She could feel the world closing in. "Think," she urged herself, feeling the sharp edges of fear clawing at her sanity. There had to be a way to help. The slender creature was fighting not just for itself, but for Claire too. It was fighting for survival. Just then, a sudden thought flickered like lightning. The rock formation. If she could get the higher ground, maybe she could find a way to distract the beasts. Without thinking twice, Claire tore herself from her hiding spot. She could feel the shadows chasing her, their malevolent whispers echoing in her ears. "Keep moving," she murmured, her legs screaming with effort. She leaped over roots and ducked under branches, the slender creature still battling furiously behind her. As she reached the rocky outcrop, she climbed the uneven surface, pushing herself up with trembling hands. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, and the once twisted images of nightmares began to clarify. She had seen how the slender creature barely dodged those monstrous claws. But the sheer number of those shadows was terrifying. Would they notice her if she kept to the stones? Claire climbed higher until she reached a ledge, her heart racing. From there, she could see everything: the chaotic melee, the mass of shadows, and the massive beast as it roared, its eyes full of malice and hunger. "Hey!" Claire shouted, her voice like a beacon cutting through the night. "Over here." This drew the eyes of both the slender creature and the monstrous brute. The shadows paused for a fleeting moment, their attention shifting toward her. "Come on," she yelled, waving her arms wildly, her instincts kicking in. Panic surged, a primal need to survive, a necessity to help the creature that fought for her. The slender creature skidded to a halt before the advancing shadows. It turned and looked up at her, those iridescent eyes sparkling with a mix of gratitude and urgency. In that heartbeat, barriers began to break. She was no longer just an observer. She was part of this fight now. The growls intensified, and then the fully unleashed power of the monstrous beast erupted forward, crashing toward her. It was like a freight train of fury, and Claire's heart dropped. "Not yet," she shouted, lifting herself to her feet as the creature barreled in. She spotted a few branches nearby and, with a wild dash, snatched them up. She'd seen how the slender creature used agility to outsmart predators. But what if she could harness the quickness of the shadows against themselves? With a plan brewing in her mind, she took the branches and began waving them in a frenzy, imitating the movements of the slender creature, trying to get their chaotic attention. "Look, over here. You want this," she yelled, adrenaline pumping as she twirled the branches, inspiring confusion amongst the shadows. The creatures started to dart toward her, shifting their course, excited by the unpredictable movements. And then she saw a glimmer of opportunity as the massive beast charged toward the shadows, its focus diverted. It lunged forward, jaws snapping, but its power was misdirected. It collided with a cluster of shadows, causing chaos in their ranks. Claire shouted, urging the slender creature to seize the moment. Now, while they're distracted, without hesitation, the slender creature darted toward the fray, utilizing the chaos to strike at the shadows, gaining ground as Claire continued to create diversions. Her heart pounded, mixing terror with an exhilarating rush. She could feel the tide shifting. The battle raged as the shadows writhed and hissed, but with Claire's distraction, the slender creature regained a semblance of control. It moved with ferocity, slashing at the foes that threatened them both. The ground shook again this time, not from a beast's charge, but from a collective roar of anguish at the realization that they were losing control. The shadows began to break apart, some retreating, blending back into the dark. Yet, just as everything seemed to tilt in their favor, an eerie silence fell in the clearing. It was a hush filled with dread, the calm before a violent storm. From the forest's depths, a monstrous figure loomed, darker and more sinister than anything Claire had faced yet. The eyes glowed a dull red, a powerful presence that went beyond mere nightmares. It was an embodiment of terror. "Run!" The slender creature's urgency jolted Claire. She turned and sprinted, the urgency of the moment overtaking her once more. The fight wasn't over. It had intensified. With the last push of her strength, she urged the slender creature to follow her as they sprinted into the depths of the forest together. The night was alive with chaos, but they were no longer alone. They were fighting this together. The shadows screamed and howled as they chased them, but the bond forged in fear and desperation became their shield. Each step laid the foundation of a new alliance, a shared purpose to survive whatever horrors awaited them. As dawn kissed the sky, a light broke through the canopy overhead, illuminating the path ahead. Claire felt a spark of hope ignite within her, a notion that out of the darkness, something beautiful might emerge. United with the creatures of the night, they were ready for whatever awaited them beyond the trees. The struggle had forged them into allies. Together, they would discover the fate that lay at the end of this harrowing adventure, and perhaps even change their destinies. But still, the shadows lurked just beyond the daylight. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that dive deep into the unknown. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this gripping finish. Your support is what keeps this community alive.